Hi there, and welcome to another episode of the Navy Dad Channel. You know, Navy parents are curious people. We have a lot of questions about military life, about Navy life specifically, and there's a lot of great places that you can go to look for answers to your questions. But sometimes there's going to be some questions and some curiosity that just lingers. I recently had the opportunity to sit down with an RDC that served at Recruit Training Command in Great Lakes through 2021. And I had the opportunity to sit down and ask him some inside baseball questions or some nuts and bolts questions about Navy boot camp. And it was a very entertaining process. I enjoyed the opportunity to sit down and ask him some of those questions. I hope that you find the interview to be entertaining and useful. If you do, I would greatly appreciate it if you would like, share, and subscribe to the page. And so for now, let's just turn you over to that interview. And again, hope you enjoy it. Welcome to the Navy Dad Channel. Kind of the nature of my channel is as a parent, when I started with my first son and then on to my second son, there's just so many questions that parents have that you can kind of get some answers to from Facebook and from recruiters, but there's always going to be some holes or some details that get kind of lost. So I'm really glad I had an opportunity to ask an RDC. So how long were you at an RDC at Great Lakes?
4 years from 2017 to 2021.
And your active duty kind of, I think you mentioned that you probably going to make a career out of the Navy. Get the 20 years in, correct?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it makes sense. I know a lot of people that just kind of stay in for their one contract or two and get out. And I have nothing against those people. And some of those people I met are wonderful people. Um, I have, so I don't have the argument against people who just do the want to get out or the people who want to do the full 20. For me, it just makes sense with the way things are going financially and medically with my family and me. So the Navy's treated me really well. I know Navy's treated other people bad before. But for me, it's been a good experience. So I'm just gonna go for 20, collect the pension, and start a second career.
But that's so much like life, though. I mean, everything's got to be about grabbing the right tool for the right job. I mean, I just bought an electric truck. People go, "Why'd you buy an electric truck?" And I'm like, "Well, it fits for what I need." The Navy's going to be a good call
Yeah,
for some people, and some people it's not. I mean, I think it's going to be a great fit for my two boys, and one may go for 20, and the other maybe go for one contract and out. You never know, or vice versa. So, no, I agree with you 100%. It's got to be your life, your experience, and all of that. Um, I want to break this kind of this interview, if you don't mind, up into kind of two parts, some nuts and bolts, and then some human questions about the position. But let me start off with
sure.
some nuts and bolts questions, which is kind of one of the things that parents kind of want to hear and want to get those questions filled with some nuts and bolts or some inside baseball, so to speak. The first rule of Fight Club is don't talk about Fight Club. So let's talk
Don't talk
about
about Fight Club.
an RDC perspective on OPSEC. What's OPSEC like for you, and what do you expect for sailors or recruits? And do you sometimes do you see parents kind of blurring the line of being a parent and engaging in conversations and topics that kind of aren't respecting OPSEC?
So if you're talking strictly, you said nuts and bolts, right? So I'm assuming you mean like black and white. What's the rules on that? They change from time to time, but the for the most part, the only OPSEC you get when it comes to, at the very least, if you're talking from boot camp and on, right? So if it's boot camp, there's a few what we call page 13s. And what it states is if I were to tell you, hey, the sky is blue, you now know the sky is blue, sign this page 13 to say that you now know the sky is blue. And if you say, I don't know what color the sky is, you're like, well, we already told you it was blue. Here's the page 13. So that would be like a, a sad example.
Yeah,
Battle stations is one of those. So we talk
yeah.
about, which is the culmination of everything that happens at the end of boot camp. Um, I forget what the Marine Corps call it, but theirs is like a week long. Ours is about 36 to 48 hours. And so there's a page 13 you sign that says you're not allowed to talk about battle stations. And the purpose is because it would just ruin it for anyone because it's supposed to be a surprise. It's supposed to be a thing where you react on your feet and see how well you do, utilize your training. So there's stuff like that when it comes to OPSEC. Now you go outside of boot camp. Now you're talking about a plethora of things. That could be anything from like when you pull into port to how specific gear works and maintenance, how engines work, how we routinely do certain things. So as when the parents probably won't know unless their child tells them those kind of things. So have I seen those kind of things? No, not really. I usually see it from like spouses or something, or the spouse will share with their significant other, "Hey, we're going to be pulling in during this time. Don't tell anyone." And then they'll put it all over Facebook like a week ahead of time that they're pulling in. That's a huge no, and that's where you would see the OPSEC problems. And then what happens is
Yeah,
that port visit gets canceled. Or
I just
so
heard
there's
about that.
a,
I
for
just
example, I saw one. Yeah, there was one where a ship was supposed to pull in, and the husband told his wife, "Hey, we're gonna be coming home on this day. I can't wait to see you." And then so she just put it all over Facebook, and apparently she herself was some sort of influencer, or at least had some sort of following. So much so that the Navy picked up that she was sharing this, and so they extended their deployment for about a month.
ooh, ouch. Yeah, I think I
Yeah.
saw that same story. There was I think it's the same story. The ship got delayed. I didn't hear that how long the delay was, but it was based on a spouse on social media expressing or exposing some deployment return details. Um,
Oh yeah, it's a big
so
no-no.
there's kind of a break between, like you said, there's a break between boot camp because boot camp the recruits are secluded, and so they haven't had an opportunity to explain some of the rules to their spouses or to the parents when they get back. So there's a little bit of a difference, and everything with the exception of battle station isn't as operation critical as once they go out to fleet. But once they go out to fleet, it's going to be a much more strict rigor on uh, keeping those things held tight that are supposed to be held tight. Correct?
Yeah, the ITs themselves will even sometimes scan emails and just to make sure that you're not sending out anything you shouldn't be sending out. Um, but it's not common. From what I've seen personally, you don't commonly see people just putting out that kind of information. Everyone knows, hey, don't do this. Like just
Yeah.
wait, you'll be fine. Blah 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 blah. It doesn't really commonly happen. So much so that when we hear it does happen, like when that dude told his wife, well, we make fun of him. It's funny. It stinks that they did that, but we it's yeah, you just don't really see it commonly. Yeah, there would be those things, but I mean, it's you can't share what you don't know. So if your child or your spouse, brother, sister, whoever you know is serving, they're probably not going to tell you, so you don't have to worry about sharing that stuff too much.
Yeah. Well, now I had a parent when I posted a picture of my kid once he graduated from Great Lakes and was getting on a naval plane headed to Goose Creek. He had a photo and it had his name, and I posted that he was off to Goose Creek, and somebody said that I shouldn't even have posted that because it had his destination and his name on that. Would that kind of be an accurate representation of what you should or shouldn't do, or is that pretty minor?
I mean, it could be a major thing, it could be a minor thing. Those are one of those what's the best way to describe it? It is one of those you could easily blow this out of proportion kind of a situation. It would probably be best just to say, "Yay, I'm proud of my child for doing this and posting photos." I think that's wonderful. But it's best not to share any information of where they're going, just because it's for their protection. So if
Mm,
they and if you could talk about like the enemy will know kind of a thing, where if you know
yeah,
that that child is stationed on this ship, then you know that that ship's going to be in this location, or this group of infantry is going to be in this location. You're now telling everyone our movements kind of a situation. It's so yeah, it could be like a hey, don't do that, or it could be a blown up out of proportion thing. In reality, the best practice would just be just don't. There's no need for everyone to know where they're going. Just just be happy
yeah.
that they're gonna come back, kind of a situation, I guess. But be proud of them, post pictures. That's fine, but don't be telling the world about where they're going.
So as a parent or as a spouse, you're going to learn because he was right out of boot camp. We hadn't had that opportunity to debrief, so to speak, and learn about all of the Navy life that he's being taught and exposed to. So I didn't know that, but somebody told me that. So it's a learning process as a parent. I'm sure it'd be a learning process as a parent as well. Um, You got any good stories from boot camp with regards to like contraband, parents sending things that they shouldn't send? How does that work?
Oh man, that's a good one. Actually, I haven't been asked that question before. I gotta think. Yes, I mean, so to clarify, I guess for your audience, there are things that you there's like, oh, what do they call 'em? Like, there's packages, of like,
Yep.
what are they called? Uh, the comfort packages. I can't remember. I'm drawing a huge blank right now. But
Yeah.
yeah, I know. Like I remember when I went through boot camp as a recruit. My wife had sent me pictures of our child because my first son was born when I was in boot camp. And so, things like that are good. So to clarify, I would definitely, if you have stuff like that to send your child or significant other, definitely send them. But as far as like, no dirty magazines or anything like that, that's for sure. Oh yeah. Oh, okay. I've definitely seen stuff like that. Their significant other sent them special photos of themselves to the to the to the recruit. And the thing is, if there's photos, we have to like go through them, kind of a thing, to make sure they're
Do you
not,
really?
pornographic or in nature. And it was like, oh, and then, like I showed the recruit, I was like, this is yours, kind of a thing. I'm gonna lock it up in this locker. You'll have it at the end of boot camp unless you just want to shred it now. But yeah, there was one, a glitter bomb came once. That was pretty funny
Ooh.
because we had them open up the box and just glitter went everywhere, and I had like a music card playing, and it was everyone thought he was in huge trouble. I thought it was hilarious. I just made him clean it up.
Well, we had my kid. He's got to be the king of. He's in boot camp right now, and he's the king of mail. He gets like 10 letters a day, but he's got all kinds of people writing him letters. One of the friends of the family um, put a stick of gum in the letter, and that was heaven for him. So now he's asking
Ah,
everybody to send him sticks of gum, and
yeah,
we're like, no, quit asking. I'm not sending it.
yeah, yeah. And I've heard of someone who like took some dip and smoothed it all out between a whole envelope so that someone could have like dip in there. There's crazy things. Don't do that. But I guess people had to withdraw. Um, but yeah,
What would
letters
happen? What would
letters do
happen if you found a
wonders to
stick of
recruits.
gum?
Me, I would just throw it away. If I was the RDC,
Yeah.
I'd be like, "Nice try, I caught it this time. We're throwing it away." But definitely, like, just to touch on that, care packages is what they're called, the boxes. But
Yep.
yeah, letters do wonder for recruits, for sailors, Marines, anyone going through any branch of boot camp or even just on deployment. Literally, those letters mean everything, even if it's a simple like thinking of you, goodbye kind of a thing. They're
Yep.
really great.
Yeah, my kid told me that there's another kid that he knows that wasn't getting any letters. So my wife and I started writing to him, and we've kind of struck up a relationship with him. And I don't know if he ended up getting letters. There was a delay, but for a period of time there, he wasn't getting anything, and my kid's like the king of mail next to him. But anyway, he's apparently he's a 49ers fan and I'm a Rams fan. So I've been sending him letters talking crap about football. And so
There we go.
that's kind of lifted his spirits. And so it's kind of
Yeah,
fun to get, can't wait to meet, so we haven't met him yet. So we'll meet him at graduation. So we're looking forward to that. But I know
that's
mail's
wonderful for you guys to do that.
yeah, yeah. Um, Back to some of the nuts and bolts. As a parent, I see these kids that graduated, and at the graduation they get honored with the six achievement awards. But I have no idea
Oh
how
yeah.
that comes to. How does that come to be? Who makes those selections? Is it the RDCs? Is there some big Navy people involved in that? Or tell me what that process looks like.
So, um, when I was there, I don't remember all the awards, but there's some of the awards. What happened is if they are in the top 10% of the training group. So to clarify, there's divisions that are uh and then divisions make up training groups. So when you go
Hmm.
to a graduation, you're going to see multiple divisions graduating. That's one training group. So each week a
Yeah.
training group graduates, and a training group is made up of divisions. It can be anywhere between 4 to 12. So depending on the season, usually the summer ones you see a lot of divisions. Sorry, getting distracted. But so that training group is what they do is the top 10% of the recruits in that training group. So it could be like I don't remember exactly all the points of what makes them top 10%, but it was like academic. Did they pass their PFA? I don't remember if it was like their speed of PFA, and it was his overall score how they're doing in boot camp. So you have top 10%, and then it knocks it down to I believe 5%. I can't. These percentages also take with a grain of salt. I can't remember. But what we do is we submit all those names. They're ranked, and then they say, all right, here's the top 5%. Now you got to like fight to see who, now put them in order of who you think should be the winner kind of thing for your division. And then all the RDCs of all the training group do this. Now the RDCs, there's two sections. There's the part where the RDCs vote, or there's, I should say, there's two graphs. There's the RDC voted, and then there's the recruits voted. So the recruits will vote like who they think is number 1, 2, 3, 4, if they're in that,
Oh,
if you
really?
have any in the division. And then that's sent up, and then there's a board. And then at the conclusion of the board, they'll ask them questions like, "What is what does honor, courage, commitment mean to you?" Stuff like that. They'll ask them like situational questions and like leadership questions, even though they're might be just an E1. They just it gives an opportunity for those to stand out. And then those are the ones that are selected. Those are the ones that receive those awards, and they receive a ribbon. I forget what the ribbon is called, but it does give them an additional point on their advancement exam for the rest of their career.
Yeah, so that'll help them rank up at some point. They can put that on their resume, so to speak.
Yeah. So, yeah, like a resume, but it's called in the Navy, it's called an evaluation. But it's like a resume
Okay.
saying like, "Hey, I'm
Yeah.
doing my job and I'm good at it," kind of a thing.
What's the deadline? At what point in the if going back as a frame of reference, I don't know if it was 8 weeks when you went through probably, but it's 10 week now. So what do you think the week that selection is completed um, to select those six?
Um, Usually it's for an RDC. It's actually a really the progress sucks. Just because they will put out who's on the top 10 for you to label down to the top five. I'm sorry, it's either top 10 to top five or 5 to 3, but either way, there's two lists. You fill out the information for one, and then it's sent back to you, and then you rank and send it again. And there's a deadline for it, and it's always the deadline is the day they put out this information, and it's usually a couple days prior to graduation. Now with
Uh,
bootcamp being 10 weeks, I don't know if that when they do it. Those, to be honest, it's called we used to call it the Red Book, but it's called the Recruit Training Manual, and it's the rule book that RDCs follow, and that changed constantly, especially now with the big change of it being 10 weeks now. So it could be in the middle of the boot camp, but that doesn't make sense. It'd be near the end, just because it's going to be after all the academic tests are completed.
well, that's some great insight because I wouldn't have thought that the recruits got to nominate or have any say to any degree in the process at all. So that surprises me, but it's a good surprise. I think that's great. But leadership, there's a lot of leadership, like you know, who's gathering mail or who's in charge of scheduling watch or who's scheduling
Oh
cleaning
yeah.
of the head, etc. When recruits show up at Great Lakes off the bus, what's the process go? How do you guys select leaders for one? Uh, do you have any do you have any like pre-recommendations from recruiters back home? And then sometimes do those decisions fall through and you got to pick somebody else once they arrive?
Yeah, sorry. I'm just laughing because it falls through at times. Um, yeah, so to answer your questions in order, hopefully get them in order. When you arrive, night of arrival, there's a lots of videos on it. I have videos covering it as well. But it's just purely processing. And so the first 5 days of your boot camp is called processing days or P days. And
Yep.
that's literally just to do medical paperwork, stuff like that. So there, you could be selected during that time by your RDC to be, the recruit petty officer in charge, the assistant recruit petty officer in charge, or so they call the RPOC, AROC, the MA, the head PO, the male PO being petty officer, by the way.
Yep.
So the athletics petty officer, the education there's a lot. It's more of a delegation thing, but it also gives a chance to own a certain thing. But yeah, there's a lot out there of different leadership positions. And as far as selection, it could be P1 day that you're selected as RPOC. Sometimes you're sitting in P hold is what it's called, which means you haven't hit a P1 day. You're maybe be there an extra day before your actual RDCs come and pick you up. So there's been times where I had a division like that where when I was introduced to them on P one day, they'd actually been there for 2 days. They just wasn't time for them to start their P days yet, their boot camp, and there's RDCs on hold that watch them, and it's like, oh yeah, hey, I selected these guys as your RPOC and this guy's your AROC and blah blah blah. I was like, cool, thanks. And then I said, all right. And as soon as I got in there, I said, RPOC, AROC, you're fired. So and then we went on about our day. Definitely, I have fired like 3 RPOCs in one day before, and it's not like an instant sense it's a game. When you're an RDC, you're looking for someone that can follow basic instructions. When it comes to any recruit, but one that gets it just a little bit better, and then can have others follow them doing it. And the only thing you need to do to get someone to follow you at boot camp is just to tell them to do it, and then you do it yourself. Just follow through with it.
Yeah.
It's really not hard to be an RPOC leader. It's actually, I think it's a great opportunity, but any leadership position is great. A lot of people will say that RDCs were the RPOCs of their division, and obviously that's not true because I was the window cleaner, so and I still got to be an RDC.
Yeah. It's funny. Both my kids ended up being leadership. What do you call it? For the head.
Head POs.
They both
Yeah.
head
Very
PO,
respectful
head PO,
job.
Yeah, they both got.
Love my head POs. They're one of the hardest workers in boot camp, and I usually put them. I usually put them up from a promotion as well. RDCs at the time, I don't know if they still do it, but there was a certain amount you could select to automatically promote to the next pay grade from E1 to E2 or E2 to E3.
Yeah, so head PO is like a family tradition now. Yeah.
Very respectable job. Very important job.
Yeah. Hey, so as a parent, I sit there and I watch all of these comments on Facebook and social media on the graduation or the division groups on Facebook, and I see these parents that get so engaged or interested and fixated on the phone calls, and some recruiters will tell their kid, they're going to get a phone call at week 2, and they'll get about an hour, but the reality is they only may get 15 to 20 minutes because you're using, as an RDC, I would imagine you're kind of using that phone call time as a little bit of currency to get them to start working as a unit and as a team. And so by the time they get down to the phone bank, what parents think they're going to have an hour, that recruit may only have 10 to 20 minutes on the phone. When they go to make the phone call, tell me what that process looks like. They're in their bunks. Are they called down to muster? And then explain to me how that process works.
Yeah. So phone calls. Once again, I am going off of somewhat dated information because the rules used to change monthly. But for the 4 years I was there was 3 phone calls that you would receive, and you're scheduled for an hour at a phone center. So when you're in these buildings that are barracks, but we call them ships, when you're in boot camp, you call everything that you would call as if you were on an actual ship, just as part of training. So there's no hallways, there's P-ways, there's no walls, there's bulkheads, there's no ceiling, there's overheads. So you get your division together, you march over to the phone center, which is like this mini naval exchange, or NEX, or as people call it. And there's just rows and rows of phone booths, and you're scheduled for an hour. Now, that means your entire division has an hour to make a phone call. Not each person is going to get an hour. So you might be scheduled at the same time that another division is there. So you might have to share it 50-50. And then at the same time, if your division is very large, they might have to share it within the division itself. So there's an hour set aside for them to make a phone call. It's not necessarily each recruit gets an hour. And then keep in mind as well, most recruits, they will call their boyfriend, girlfriend before they call their parents 100%. Just so if you hear I can only talk to you for 5 minutes, no such thing. They probably called someone else. You didn't get called first. I'm sorry to hear that. Everyone should be calling their parents whenever they can. But no, we don't restrict it. It's literally it's a set time, and you get that time, then you got to go because there's another division waiting in line to go use the phones. It's all pay phones. It's not like we give them back their cell phones to use and then we take it back from them. It's literally just you go. They get these cards and phone cards, and they use them on minutes to call you. So you might get a random call from like a long phone number that's from a booth during that time. That's going to be them. Don't ignore it. It's not a spam caller. But yeah, well, it's not used against them. They're usually
It's
what we
not
do, as I
they
would
don't use
always tell my
they don't lo- they don't lose privilege if they've gotten in if they're not working together as a team. That's kind of unrelated. Is that what you're saying?
yeah. My if I remember correctly, that was a bad like you get in trouble if you took away a phone call from the recruits.
Mm.
That's something they're required to give them. You can give them more. I have actually scheduled more. I had one division that was a killer division. They did great, well put together. And as a reward, I said, "Hey, I found an opening in the phone center. Let's go make some extra phone calls." And it was wonderful, great division. Um, but yeah, no, I mean, there's things we can utilize for the phone calls themselves. Where I would tell my recruits after they're done talking, hey, hold the phone out, and I'll go up and down yelling and like get off the phone, and you're like just really like to make it more intense, but in the background they're like laughing, you know. You end up getting a weird connection with your recruits. It's definitely
Yeah.
I know very little RDCs that just did not care at the end about their recruits.
Yeah, and that we'll get into that in the humanity section. Just a couple more questions on kind of some nuts and bolts, but um, flags. Can you and how many flags and who gets to carry the flags at graduation? Can you kind of tell me what that process looks like?
Yeah, so flags. So you have what we call sticks. When it comes, trying to like organize my brain to explain this. So you have what's called like a mass formation, and it's in columns of six, which means or six rows, if you will, of people. Whenever you see it, you'll see them if you look at those graduation videos that are posted up on Facebook and YouTube. They're made by the Navy and put out for everyone to look at. That's called mass formation, and you'll see them in the front. We call those sticks as I guess an acronym, but they're the ones that hold the flags. They're the flag carriers, and they're usually the shortest people. And doesn't have to
Yeah.
be the shortest people, but you must afford. If I remember the wording correctly, back in 2020, it was every recruit below 5'5" must be afforded the opportunity to become a stick. And so this is what you call the ones that carry the flags. You got sticks to include two extra ones in the front, which is your PFC and your guidon, your personal flag carrier and your guidon. Um, but yeah, so the flag. So you got the guidon. It's like a pennant. It's a blue rectangle. That'll have your
Hmm.
division number. That's what the guidon carries. PFC will carry your uh, a flag that has your ship on it. But at graduation, you'll carry one of these, the ones that your division makes. They'll carry that at graduation instead. Although that is carried when it is completed. And then other flags you earn would be like flags to show that your division is doing well. So if your division scores really well in drill, you get a drill flag. If everyone did really well in the written test, you get a scholastic flag. If everyone passed their PFA, then you get an athletic flag. So it's just flags. The more flags you get, it's bragging rights to show that you're doing well as a division.
That's interesting. So they make their own flag, kind of like tribal flags on Survivor, huh?
Kind of, yeah. It's a um, all the other flags are given to them, but they're allowed to create a personal flag. So these are all just ones from my divisions where I purchased the flag and the flag material and the paint and everything like that. But if any of the recruits want to purchase their own material and stuff like that, RDCs can't take it anymore. Just because then you'd be stealing at that point. You could just give it to one of your recruits, which I did with one of the flags. They said I could have it, but I ended up giving it to the RPOC.
Hey, so there's an interesting dilemma that my son had. My first son is now he wasn't heavy, but he lost so much weight at boot camp that by the time he got to Goose Creek, his peanut butters were really not fitting him. How often do you see kids have significant weight loss to where their uniforms are really hanging on them as they go to A school?
Quite a few times. So not to be disrespectful to your son or anything like that, but there's a lot of people who just, I would say, fitness wasn't really in their daily routine. They themselves may not have been unfit, or it's one of those things where you find if the body moves and you eat healthy, just all that goes away. So it actually happens quite a lot. You'll see some people come in that are you don't even sometimes even think they're large kind of people, but then 4 weeks go by and all of a sudden they're like, petty officer, my pants don't fit anymore, and like, holy crap, you did lose a lot of weight, but you didn't look like you had a lot of weight to lose in the first place. So yeah, it happens quite a lot, and that's good, right? There's always I always say there's two reasons why your uniform will never fit, and only one of them's good, you know. So is it too loose? Great, wonderful. If it's too tight, for me personally, I never go up in size of uniform. I just use it as like a time to hit the gym a little harder and make smarter choices. But yeah, it actually happens quite a lot. You'll see a lot of them
Does
just they take to it really well, and they there's opportunities to still kind of gain weight at boot camp, but they'll usually you'll see people just take it 100%. They'll volunteer to be the person that runs to destination as a runner, as a messenger to deliver things because they just want more and more PT. They take it to heart really well.
really?
They use it as an opportunity to turn around.
Gotcha. Now, if that does happen, does the Navy help them get resized, or are they just going to have to fill out when they get to A school?
um, yes and no. So no, the Navy's not gonna be like, well, we noticed you lost some weight. Here's a new uniform. That's not how that works. But you do yearly get a uniform allowance, and it's usually equivalent to
Gotcha.
your pay grade.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
The uniform
Uh,
allowance is given to you on the month that you join the military.
gotcha. For you personally, what was some of the most challenging and rewarding aspects of being an RDC?
Oh, that's a good question. So I could easily answer the rewarding part. My rate is more of a technical rate, my job, MOS, if you will, in the Navy. So even sometimes as a leader, you don't really get that instant win. And as a technician, you're just constantly doing maintenance. You're not necessarily like creating things that give you a sense of euphoria, if you will. Um, and what it being an RDC, it happens a lot. You will have sometimes recruits come to you that are just you never even knew they came from like a bad place, and they'll tell you this is like, thank you, this is great for me, I'm so happy to be here, you've inspired me, kind of stuff, which is really cool to hear. But the easy win for sure would be you get 100 people that don't have their haircut within standards. It's civilian clothes, they're completely honest, they're civilians, in a sense, but they're not ready to be in the military, and they can't even walk straight or march or sound off. And then 2 months later, you see them making the left turn that you see them do in those videos as a group, in a mass formation, and you salute them as they go by as your RDC, and they look amazing. They're sharp in their dress uniforms, in unison, standing tall, looking proud. Everyone's shouting for them. Oh, I see my son or I see my daughter, kind of a thing, and that's a huge win. So easily, that's a reward that happens every 2 to 3 months. Huge reward because you got to be part of that. So as far as struggles, I'm not really a good, um, excuse me, I'm not really a good one to actually ask for struggles because I had a very unique experience of being an RDC. I've seen some people have really, really rough times. For me, outside of the times it was COVID, I had a wonderful time. This is why I say unique because I don't want to oversell it to people and say, be an RDC, it's the best thing ever. I've seen some people sadly lose their marriages. And their career go down the toilet because they're good sailors but bad RDCs. So no, it's very, very tough. But I was lucky enough to have really good partners. I was really lucky enough to have a good partner at home. My wife was extremely supportive, and I was very, very lucky to have good mentors that I met while I was there that really took care of me and guided me. And even I would give them credit as well as to me making chief. Like the reason why I made chief, I would give them credit toward it too.
Well, it's a big impact on you guys too. From what I understand, it's some pretty serious hours when you're on push, um, isn't it?
Yes, especially in the beginning. P days you'll see mostly rep to tap, which means you're there when the recruits wake up to the point that they go to bed. So that means you're awake longer. Excuse me, you're awake longer than them. So if they wake up at 4, you have to be there at 4. So you're waking up at 3, and they go to bed at 10. You're going to bed at 11, and then you still have to be there the next day, ready to go, uniform looking good. So yeah, P days is pretty rough. Everyone usually revs to taps during P days. And then the first few weeks, it's pretty rough hours. Not necessarily rev to tapping anymore, but unless you're like a new RDC, we call them hippies or hops. And after that, you get a routine, but still, I would still put in about 10 to 12 hours, and it's Monday through Sunday. It's 7 days a week. There's no
Hmm.
one, and if there's a holiday and you're on push, you're coming in to push those recruits on a holiday. There's no who's going to replace you. You know, you're the RDC.
Yeah, I totally get it. I mean, I work a lot of hours myself, but nothing quite like that. So, uh, hats off to you because we hear, as a parent, we hear on our end on the phone how exhausted they are. And you can add an hour in the AM and an hour at the PM to what you're doing. Easy. So you guys got to be have some serious stress, and it's got to be hard on the family while you're on push. But on the humanity side of being an RDC, do you feel like sometimes you got to kind of hide your humanity, and if you see an underdog that you're kind of pulling for, is it kind of hard to hide that sometimes? Do you find yourself sometimes seeing somebody that you're really pulling for?
Um, no, I think so. th- My style of being when I was an RDC wasn't necessarily to be robotic. It was
Mhm.
to do everything I could to know the answer for sure and always be there. And I made it like a thing to never sit in front of the recruits and never eat in front of the recruits. I just
Mm.
because I not in a sense of showing weakness, but to show that every time around them, they are my focus, and I'm here to train them, here to take care of them. So there was a lot of things that the RDCs, the recruits thought was scary, because I'm a very tall person. And then I was very fit, and I have a lot of tattoos on my arms. So to them, it was very scary to see someone like that. Just always, they never saw me sit, and they never saw me eat. Um, but anytime they came to me in the sense of that they needed help with something, especially later on, it's almost inevitable near the end of a cycle at boot camp, a push, uh, showing the human side works so well. Showing them that you do care, showing them that you are actually rooting for them, that you want them to succeed, because that is the point. You do want them to succeed.
Yeah.
So showing humanity is actually a great thing I've utilized in my toolbox as a leader, and so no, I did not have a hard time showing it, or not showing it, I should say. There was times for sure, yeah, sometimes I need to have humanity, and sometimes I need to look them in the face and tell them to suck it up and move along.
Yeah.
But uh no one's everyone's gonna have a rough day, and that's no different between recruits, RDCs, civilian, military. It doesn't matter, parents, children, everyone has rough days, so just being there for them whenever you can. And yeah, showing humanity actually helps a lot. It gets
You know,
by.
there's one particular scene that I saw on one of the RDC documentaries where they were talking about the kids that struggle to swim. There's some cultural aspects as to why some kids struggle to swim. They haven't had the opportunity to ever even see a pool, more or less get in it. Um, but then when you see a kid that they're just sick to their stomach, worried about having to get into a pool, and that's real. I mean, that's something we don't think about if you've never been in that position, and you're doing it under pressure. But on the flip side, that documentary I watched, it seemed like the RDC or maybe they're not RDCs, they're specific swimming trainers. They're not driving you, they're coming alongside to teach you to swim. But the big picture that I took from that is that's a life skill that's going to transcend just the Navy. You've given somebody a life
Yeah.
skill, and the Navy's going to teach lots of life skills, but that's kind of one example of something that it's a small mountain for them to overcome, and it's bigger than we think it is because a lot of people, they grow up swimming, but the Navy's going to teach life skills. And as an RDC, when you see somebody achieve something that they thought that they couldn't achieve, that's gotta deep down inside, that's gotta give you some pride.
The feeling never gets old. It's always wonderful. It's because you don't even have to have the buy-in. They'll come to you.
Mhm.
They'll be like, "Oh, petty officer or chief, whoever you are. I can't swim. I've never been to a pool. I've never been to the ocean before. I've never swam. I don't know how to swim." And usually I'm like, "Well, that you probably should have learned that before you get here, but you'll be fine, man. It's you're in a safe environment. These are rescue swimmers. They're trained to rescue people in freezing temperature waters with 20-foot waves, and you're in a heated pool. You'll be fine. So just do what they say, and then you'll actually be surprised that it's not that hard. And either the same day after the swim, or after they go for a couple of tries, they'll come back to you just ecstatic, eyes like dinner plates, and they're just smiling ear to ear, and they're like, "I did it, I did it, I passed." And you're like, you know, sometimes it depends on where it is. If it's in the beginning of training, I usually just like dead stare them in the face. I'm like, "Good, now go with your division." But inside, I'm like, "Yeah, it's so cool to see those kind of things."
There's the opposite of that. Those that are, there's the ones I was talking about, that like the swimmers who are worried about succeeding. But then there's the flip side to that, which is those that are maybe overly confident coming into boot camp. And it's like that phrase from that quote from Mike Tyson: "Everybody has a plan until you get punched in the mouth." Um, do you see recruits that
Oh yeah.
come in who think they got the world by the tail, and they may have been captain of the football team or that type A alpha male personality, and all of a sudden they're in a different world, in a different context, and they're not succeeding like they thought they were going to?
Um, Great question. Let me think about that one for a second. Okay, I got to answer. So I've seen one where they came in, the whole alpha male thing, like, which blew my mind. I mean, just I want you to imagine any profession in the world and then be in charge of it, and you probably just don't know what to do. So why in the world would you come to boot camp and think that you know everything about the Navy? So we had one that was like that, where um, she was a wife of a chief, and she decided to join the military for
Oh,
some reason. I don't know what their choice was, but she literally would just like walk up and talk to us like we're human, like we're equals in a sense. And to clarify, as human beings, yes, but in the military pay grade, you were at the bottom of the pool. You don't, you were a recruit. I don't care that your husband's a chief. You don't care at all. That you're a recruit and you're going to be doing this. You don't know how this works, and it proved to show that she didn't know how it worked because she had so little respect for me and my chief that she would just walk into spaces that are for staff only and stuff and just start complaining and stuff. And we knocked her down pretty hard enough that she decided that boot camp wasn't for her and she got separated
really?
at boot camp. So she didn't become into the Navy. But yeah, I seen it, but that was the only time I saw it. Where they thought they were better than the group, which is not the right attitude. It's doesn't need to be a humbling experience. Just be part of the team and work out. You're all there to graduate. That's it. So just work together and graduate. As far as like those ones that are like, oh yeah, I was the basketball captain or I was the football captain or oh hey, I did JROTC. They usually say that and then say, what can I do to help? They usually follow up with those things like, hey, I have these skills that
Mm.
can help the team. You actually find most teenagers are extremely humbled before they even come into boot camp. And they just want to win. They just want to win. They want to graduate and just get on with it, which is a great mentality to have. That's the whole point. The whole point of going to boot camp is to get out of boot camp. So anything they could do to help move that process along, they're glad to help. And I'm usually grateful for it. But as far as like those pro alpha chads, I've always seen one, and it did end well, obviously.
Yeah, no. So there's all of this goal, like you just mentioned, the goal of boot camp is to get to the end of boot camp and graduate. When you get to that finish line and you're at the graduation, um, do you avoid getting to meet the parents to say business like, or do you sometimes enjoy getting to meet the parents? The parents come up and say, hey, thanks, and what's that parent relationship for you like?
Yeah. Once again, my experience is different than I would say most RDCs.
Mhm.
Just kind of the way I think and how my everything lined up very well for me. I was very blessed in my situation while I was there as an RDC. And I'm an extremely logical person. Everything is like a black and white thing to me. So for me, I would avoid them. At first, I just straight up avoided them. I was like, as far as I was concerned, the parents didn't want to see me. They wanted to see their kid. Why would I go and be like, hey, I was their RDC? Like, no. This isn't for me. This is for the recruits. So I need to just
Yeah.
get out of the way. So I just left. Um, and later on, I think the third or fourth push in, one of the recruits after because they had to come back to they had to come back to the compartment afterwards. to get their stuff. And one was like, "Ah, I was looking for you, Pet Officer. Where were you? I wanted to introduce you to my parents." I said, "Why? Why would you want to do that?" I was 27. I was still young, and I just to me, and I was a second class too. So um, to me, it just didn't make sense. And I was like, "Why would you want to do that? They don't want to see me. They want to see you. You graduated." And they're like, "Yeah, but I want to show them the person that got me there." I was just, and then to me, I was like, "Oh, I guess I am kind of somewhat of a figure to those people." So later on, I just made it a game. I said, if you can catch me, then I will take a picture with you and meet your parents. So, and so to me, catching me was me slowly walking the opposite way all the way to the far door. I gave them plenty of opportunity to come catch me, but I wouldn't seek it out. I would just say, if you want me,
Gotcha.
if you want me to do it, then I'm open to it. But I'm not gonna go find you. You have to go find me. So I would just take the long way. That if they caught me, they caught me. If they didn't, and that usually solved that problem.
Well, it's interesting that you would say that you wouldn't initially catch on to their pride and their wanting to introduce because the other side of that is the parent. I want to go thank that RDC that helped my get my kid across the finish line and got them to that life achievement and into their naval career. So to me, the RDCs play a big role, and just a handshake or a thank you is a big deal as a parent. So I know I'm going to try to seek out and find my kids RDC in a 10 days from now, 11 days from now, something like that. So, um, this is kind of going to be a really odd question, but um, recruits that have had a sibling go through, do you find that if a recruit's had a sibling that successfully get through, that they've got a little bit of a good picture of what to expect, and that gives them a good foundation?
Yes, very much so.
Yeah, I know my kid, he's like, I'll answer my oldest one. I'll answer all the questions, but I'm not going to push you, and I'm not going to tell you what to do. But if you got questions, I'll answer. And so they've had a pretty respectful
Yeah,
relationship.
I think I mean, that's a great way for anyone who's in the military. Just uh, answer the questions. But I cannot personally make recommendations for people to join. It's a big commitment. Um, so I think it's great that he did that. My dad actually did the same thing. So sounds very smart. He answered questions and then he asked questions. He said, "Is this what you want to do? Are you sure you want to be in the military?"
Hmm.
Um, and I told him, I was like, after I had joined, he told me he's extremely proud because he's prior military as well. Uh, but at the time, he wasn't pushing me to join. He was actually questioning whether or not I was making the right decision, which is, I think it's great. I'm sorry, I'm kind of turning it around. Yeah, I think it's great. I think it sounds very smart to answer the questions but not push them.
And your dad was former military, so I'm coming from a position where I didn't serve, and to be honest with you, I kind of regret it. I was this close to doing it, and I went in a different direction, and it many times I've questioned and regretted not doing it. Don't get me wrong, my life has turned out great. I don't have any true regrets. But when my kids are going through and they're making that decision, I have to be cognizant that I'm not pushing them to live my life vicariously through them. So I'll give them advice
Yeah,
and I'll help them research. But ultimately, like we said at the beginning of the conversation, it's got to be the right tool. It's got to be the square peg for the square hole for them, not for me. And so I've really had to walk a thin line and check myself to make sure that it's in their best interest. But interestingly enough, one of my most proudest moments was um, when it comes to life skills, I come from an education background. I currently work in this education system. Um, I really like to see aspects of education that teach life skills. And so when my kid was getting ready to go down to MEPS and he was going in to talk to his recruiter, I had to talk with him about the power of negotiation and the power of knowing your own worth and making sure that you know your worth so that you can use that worth as leverage and to make the right decision, you got to be ready to walk away if it's not right for you. And so when he got to the point he was going to the recruiter and he's going to MEPS, he said, I don't want mom and dad coming down. I'm going to do this on my own. I scored really high on the ASVAB, and he could have any enlisted position he wanted so long as they're open. And he went in there and said, I've got one job that I want. It's air traffic control, and I'm not settling for anything else. They tried to offer him nuke. They tried to offer him everything. And he stuck to his guns and he negotiated air traffic control. And he came home and he said, so how did it go? He said, signed a contract for air traffic control. And that just that alone makes you real proud. You haven't even graduated boot camp yet, but you've already learned a life skill of sitting down with Big Navy
Yeah.
and negotiating your deal,
Yeah.
the deal that you want for your life, So there's a lot of tools that, a lot of opportunities that the Navy has, in terms of developing a career or getting you to a point where you can gain the benefits to access education, the STA 21 program. All of these things are tremendous opportunities they're going to be right for somebody, but they're going to be wrong for other people. So it's a great opportunity. I'm really glad that both my boys chose that. Really proud of them. So I really appreciate your time. I don't have any more questions for you. Thank you for your service.
I appreciate you having me on. Thank
Maybe
you.
we'll do it again sometime.
Yeah, sure. Just let me know if you have any more questions
Okay.
or if any of your viewers have questions. I'm happy to answer them.
All right. We appreciate your time. Thank you very much. Thank you so much to the Chief for sitting down and talking with me. I really enjoyed it. If you enjoy the content, I would highly encourage you to go to YouTube and search for Ask a RDC and go to his channel and check out some of his content. If you found this to be informational and entertaining, please like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, Hooyah Navy. Thank you for visiting the Navy Dad channel.